the watcher in the frame. The phone sat on my nightstand, its screen glowing faintly in the dark. I blinked groggy, my eyes crusty from sleep. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the heater. My fingers fumbled for the phone, expecting a text or an alarm. Instead, the screen showed a video. Playing. Recording. Me. The timer read 13 hours 4 minutes and 27 seconds. 13 hours. My heart gave a little lurch. I didn't remember starting a video. I don't sleepwalk. I don't record myself sleeping. The footage showed my bed, my body curled under the blanket, motionless. The angle was odd, tilted, like the phone had been propped up against something. I tapped the screen to stop it. My finger hesitated. What if it wasn't just me in the video? I lived alone. My apartment was a small, tidy space on the 3rd floor of an old building. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen that doubled as a living room. No roommates, no pets. Just me. The idea of my phone recording for 13 hours felt wrong. Not just wrong, unnatural. Like someone had reached into my life and twisted it. I rewound the footage. The timestamp showed it started at 2:17 a.m. I'd gone to bed around midnight, maybe a little later. I watched myself sleep, the blanket rising and falling with my breaths. The room was dark, but the phone's night mode made everything clear. Too clear. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, but that could have been my imagination. I squinted, leaning closer. Was there something at the edge of the frame? A noise made me jump. Just the radiator, hissing like it always did. I laughed, but it came out shaky. The video kept playing. I fast-forwarded, scanning for anything out of place. At 4:03 a.m., the blanket twitched. Not me moving, just the blanket, like something tugged it. My stomach tightened. I rewound and played it again. The blanket definitely moved. A small, deliberate pull. I set the phone down. My hands were cold. I checked the apartment. The door was locked, the chain in place. Windows shut, curtains still. Nothing was out of order. I even looked under the bed, feeling ridiculous. Nothing but dust bunnies. Back to the phone. I didn't want to keep watching, but I couldn't stop. What if there was more? The video rolled on. At 6:22 a.m., the shadows in the corner seemed darker. Not just shadows, something solid. A shape. I paused the frame and zoomed in. It was blurry, but it looked like a figure. Tall, thin, standing just beyond the bed. My breath caught. I zoomed out then and again. The shape was gone in the next frame. I told myself it was a glitch. A trick of the light. Phones don't just record for 13 hours on their own. Maybe I'd bumped it in my sleep. Maybe an app malfunctioned. But the blanket. The shape. My skin prickled. I checked the phone's storage. The video was the only one in my gallery. No other files were touched. No new apps. Just this. I deleted the video. The moment I did, the screen flickered. Not a normal flicker, like a pulse, a heartbeat. The phone restarted itself. When it came back on, the video was still there. I tried again. Same thing. My chest felt tight, like the air was too thin. I turned the phone off completely and left it on the counter. The apartment felt smaller. I made coffee, trying to shake the unease. The mug was warm in my hands, grounding me. But every few seconds, my eyes darted to the phone. It stayed off. Silent. I told myself I was being paranoid. It was just a glitch. Just a weird night. I'd take it to a tech store later. They'd fix it. But as I sipped my coffee, I heard it. A faint click. Like a camera shutter. The phone was still off, its screen black. I stared at it, waiting. Another click. My pulse raced. I grabbed the phone and powered it on. The video was still there, but the timer had reset. It was recording again. Right now. I dropped the phone. It clattered onto the counter, the lens staring up at me. I wanted to smash it. Instead, I unplugged the charger and shoved it into a drawer. The drawer slammed shut, and the sound echoed. Too loud. I stood there, listening. The radiator hissed. The fridge hummed. And then, from the drawer, another click. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, watching the drawer, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. But the feeling lingered. Like eyes on the back of my neck. Like something was watching me, just out of sight. The drawer stayed shut all day. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't want to. Work was a blur, emails, meetings, the usual hum of the office. My mind kept drifting back to that video. The blanket. The shape. I told myself it was nothing. A glitch. A shadow. But my hands shook when I thought about opening that drawer again. I got home late. The apartment was dark, the kind of dark that feels heavy. I flicked on the lights, half expecting something to be different. Everything was in place. The couch, the coffee table, the dishes in the sink. Normal. I avoided the kitchen drawer. Instead, I grabbed a glass of water and sat on the couch, staring at the TV without turning it on. The silence was loud. Every creak of the building made me flinch. I kept thinking about the phone. Was it still recording? Was that shape still there, waiting in the shadows? I laughed at myself. It was just a phone. A piece of tech. Nothing more. But the laugh felt hollow. I needed to know. I couldn't just leave it in the drawer forever. I stood, my legs heavy, and walked to the kitchen. The drawer handle was cold. I pulled it open slowly. The phone sat there, black screen unplugged. Innocent. I picked it up, my fingers clumsy. I pressed the power button. The screen lit up. The video was still there. The timer showed midnight. It wasn't recording. Not now. Relief washed over me. Maybe it was over. A one-time glitch. I opened the gallery, ready to delete the video again. But there was a new file. Another video. Timestamp 3:14 a.m. last night. My stomach dropped. I hadn't touched the phone since I shoved it in the drawer. How could it record? I played the video. It showed my bedroom again. The same angle. Me asleep, the blanket pulled up to my chin. The footage was clear, too clear, like the phone was designed to see in the dark. I watched for a few minutes. Nothing happened. Just me, sleeping. I fast-forwarded. At 4:58 a.m., the blanket moved again. Not a twitch this time, a slow, deliberate slide, like someone was pulling it off me. I paused the video. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. I zoomed in on the frame. There, at the edge of the bed, was the shape again. Taller this time. Closer. It wasn't clear enough to make out details, but it was definitely there. A figure, standing, watching. I dropped the phone onto the counter. It didn't clatter this time. It just sat there, mocking me. I checked the apartment again. Door locked. Windows secure. Nothing out of place. I even checked the closet, the bathroom, behind the shower curtain. Nothing. But the video didn't lie. Something was in my room last night. Something I couldn't see when I was awake. I called my friend Ethan. He's good with tech. I told him about the videos, leaving out the shape. I didn't want him to think I was losing it. He laughed, said it was probably a software bug. Bring it over tomorrow, he said. I'll take a look. His voice was calm, normal. It made me feel a little better. But only a little. That night, I didn't sleep in my bedroom. I dragged a blanket to the couch and left every light on. The phone stayed in the drawer. I wasn't going to touch it. Not tonight. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the building settle. The radiator hissed. The fridge hummed. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. But then, around 2 a.m., I heard it. A click. From the kitchen. My blood ran cold. I sat up, staring at the doorway. The light from the living room spilled into the kitchen, but it didn't reach the drawer. Another click. I wanted to run, to leave the apartment, but my legs wouldn't move. I just sat there, frozen, listening. The click stopped. The silence was worse. I forced myself to stand, my bare feet cold on the floor. I crept to the kitchen, my breath shallow. The drawer was still closed. I didn't open it. I couldn't. Instead, I grabbed a knife from the counter and went back to the couch. I didn't sleep. I just sat there, clutching the knife, waiting for morning. When the sun finally rose, I felt like I could breathe again. The apartment looked normal in the daylight. The drawer was just a drawer. The phone was just a phone. But I knew better. Something was wrong. Something was watching me. And it wasn't done. Ethan's apartment was across town, a cluttered mess of cables and monitors. He greeted me with a grin, oblivious to the weight in my chest. I handed him the phone, still powered off. It's been acting weird, I said, keeping it vague. Recording stuff on its own. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. He just plugged it into his laptop and started typing. I sat on his couch, sipping lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug. The room smelled like old pizza and soldering flux. Ethan muttered to himself, clicking through files. This is weird, he said finally. Your phone's clean. No malware, no rogue apps. But these videos, they're huge. Like professional-grade resolution. Your phone shouldn't even be capable of that. I didn't tell him about the shape. I just nodded, my throat tight. He kept digging, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Here's the thing, he said, leaning back. The videos aren't being triggered by any app one can find. It's like the camera just turns on its own. He laughed, but it was uneasy. You sure you didn't set a timer or something? I shook my head. I didn't do anything. My voice sounded small, even to me. Ethan shrugged and handed the phone back. I can wipe it. Factory reset. That'll probably fix it. But you'll lose everything. Photos, contacts, all of it. I hesitated. The videos were the only proof something was wrong. But keeping them felt like inviting whatever it was to stay. Do it, I said. He nodded, plugged the phone back in, and started the reset. The screen went black, then flashed with a loading bar. I watched it, my stomach twisting. When it was done, Ethan handed it back. Good as new, he said. I thanked him and left, the phone heavy in my pocket. On the bus ride home, I kept glancing at it. The screen stayed dark. No notifications, no glitching. Just a normal phone. I told myself it was over. Ethan had fixed it. But the feeling lingered, like a splinter under my skin. I couldn't shake the image of that shape in the video. Tall. Silent. Watching. When I got home, the apartment felt different. Not wrong, exactly, just off. Like someone had been there and left everything slightly out of place. I checked the door. Locked. Windows secure. I was being paranoid. I had to be. I plugged the phone into charge and set it on the counter. No videos. No clicks. Just silence. I tried to go about my evening. Made dinner. Watched a show. But my eyes kept drifting to the phone. Around 10 p.m., I powered it on to set up my apps. The screen lit up, clean and empty. No videos in the gallery. I exhaled, feeling lighter. Maybe Ethan was right. A reset was all it needed. But then I opened the camera app to test it. The screen showed my kitchen, bright under the overhead light. I panned around, just to be sure. Nothing unusual. I was about to close it when I saw it. In the corner of the screen, just for a second, a shadow. Not mine. Taller. Thinner. I spun around, my heart racing. The kitchen was empty. I checked the camera again. Nothing. Just my reflection in the window. I laughed, but it was forced. My hands were shaking. I turned off the phone and shoved it back in the drawer. I wasn't going to look at it again. Not tonight. Sleep didn't come easy. I stayed on the couch again, the knife on the coffee table. The apartment was quiet, but it didn't feel safe. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the hum of the fridge, made me tense. I kept thinking about the shadow. Was it real? Was I losing it? I didn't know anymore. At 3 a.m. I heard it. Not a click this time. A whisper. Soft, like static, coming from the kitchen. I grabbed the knife and crept toward the doorway. The whisper stopped. I stood there, straining to hear. Nothing. I opened the drawer. The phone was on. The screen showed the camera app, recording. The timer read 2 minutes and 13 seconds. I didn't watch the video. I couldn't. I turned the phone off and threw it back in the drawer. My hands were trembling so badly I dropped the knife. It clattered to the floor, the sound too loud in the silence. I backed away, my eyes fixed on the drawer. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I just waited, the knife back in my hand, until the sun came up. Morning came, gray and heavy with clouds. I hadn't slept. The knife was still in my hand, my fingers stiff from gripping it. The phone stayed in the drawer. I didn't want to touch it. Didn't want to see what it had recorded. But I knew I couldn't ignore it forever. It was like an itch, deep in my mind, demanding to be scratched. I made coffee, moving slowly. The apartment felt wrong. Not just the phone now, the whole place. The air was too still, the shadows too sharp. I kept glancing at the drawer, expecting it to slide open on its own. It didn't. But the feeling was there, like something was waiting. Watching. I called in sick to work. Couldn't focus on spreadsheets when my head was full of shadows. I sat on the couch, staring at the drawer. I needed to know what was on that video. Needed to know if the shape was back. I grabbed a notebook and a pen, something to ground me. I'd watch the video, take notes, stay rational. That was the plan. I opened the drawer. The phone was cold, heavier than it should have been. I powered it on. The camera app was still open, the video from last night waiting. 2 minutes and 13 seconds. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the play button. My heart was already racing. I pressed it. The footage showed the kitchen. The counter, the sink, the knife I dropped. The timestamp read 2:58 a.m. The room was dark, but the phone's night mode made everything clear. Too clear. I watched, waiting for something to happen. At 30 seconds the knife moved. Not much, just a slide, like someone nudged it. I froze the frame. There, in the corner of the screen, was the shape. Taller than before. Closer. Its edges were blurry, but it was there. Standing. I wrote it down. 2:58 a.m. Knife moved. Shape in corner. My handwriting was shaky. I kept watching. At 1:47 the drawer opened. Just a crack, barely noticeable. I hadn't done that. I hadn't been in the kitchen. The shape was gone in the next frame, but the drawer stayed open. I paused, my breath shallow. I checked the real drawer. It was closed now. But in the video, it wasn't. I kept watching. The video ended abruptly at 2:13. No movement, no sound, just the drawer and the empty kitchen. I checked the gallery. Another video had started recording this morning. 6:12 a.m. I didn't want to play it. But I had to. The footage showed my living room. The couch, where I'd been sitting with the knife. The angle was wrong, too high, like the phone was floating. I wasn't in the frame. But the shape was. Right behind the couch. I dropped the notebook. My hands were sweating. I checked the apartment again. Door locked. Windows shut. Nothing out of place. But the videos kept happening. Every night, every morning, something new. The shape was getting closer. Bolder. I wrote it down. 6:12 a.m. shape behind couch. Phone moved. I needed to understand the pattern. Needed to know what it wanted. I called Ethan again. Told him the reset didn't work. He sounded confused. "That's not possible," he said. "I wiped it clean." I asked him to come over. I didn't want to be alone with the phone. He said he'd be there in an hour. I hung up, feeling a little steadier. Help was coming. I could handle this. But the hour dragged. The apartment was too quiet. I kept the knife close, my eyes on the drawer. I didn't open it again. Didn't need to. I knew the phone was recording. I could feel it. Like a pulse, steady and relentless. I wrote in the notebook. "It's watching me. It's always watching." When Ethan arrived, he looked uneasy. I showed him the videos. He watched in silence, his face pale. "This isn't right," he said finally. "This isn't a glitch." He didn't have answers. Neither did I. We sat there, staring at the phone like it was a bomb. Then we heard it. A click. From the drawer. Ethan jumped. I grabbed the knife. The drawer was closed, but the sound was real. We didn't open it. Ethan left, promising to research the phone's model. I locked the door behind him. The apartment felt smaller, the walls closer. I sat on the couch, the knife in my lap, the notebook open. I wrote one last thing. "It's not just the phone. It's here." I didn't touch the phone all day. It stayed in the drawer, but I could feel it. Like a heartbeat, steady and wrong. The apartment wasn't mine anymore. The air was thick, the shadows sharp. I kept the knife close, its weight a small comfort. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Not with that thing watching. I called Ethan again. No answer. I texted him, my fingers clumsy on my laptop keyboard. I didn't trust the phone anymore. He didn't reply. I tried to focus, to think logically. The videos started 5 nights ago. Each one showed the shape, closer every time. The blanket. The knife. The drawer. The couch. It was moving through my life, piece by piece. I grabbed the notebook. Flipped through my notes. The timestamps were consistent, always between 2 and 6 a.m. The shape was always there, just out of focus. I wrote, "It's not random. It's deliberate." My hand shook, the pen scratching the paper. I needed to stop it. But how do you stop something you can't see? I thought about leaving. Packing a bag, staying at a hotel. But the phone would come with me. It was part of this now. Part of me. I couldn't just leave it behind. I considered smashing it, taking a hammer to the screen, shattering whatever was inside. But what if that made it worse? What if it wasn't just the phone? The day dragged. I didn't eat. Didn't turn on the TV. The silence was better, it let me hear. Every creak, every hum, every whisper. I sat on the couch, the knife in one hand, the notebook in the other. I wrote, "It's closer now. It's always closer." The words looked wrong, like they weren't mine. At dusk, the apartment grew darker. I didn't turn on the lights. I wanted to see it. Wanted to catch it. The door was still closed, but I knew the phone was recording. I could feel it, like a hum in my bones. I waited, my eyes fixed on the kitchen. The shadows stretched, long and thin, like fingers reaching. Around midnight I heard it. Not a click. A step. Soft, deliberate, from the bedroom. My heart stopped. I gripped the knife, my knuckles white. The sound came again. Closer. I stood, my legs unsteady. The doorway to the bedroom was dark, a black rectangle in the dim light. I took a step toward it. Then another. The floor creaked under my weight. I froze, listening. Silence. I reached the doorway and peered inside. The bed was empty, the blanket neatly folded. Nothing was out of place. But the air was wrong, thick, like breathing through fog. I backed away, my eyes scanning the room. The shadows moved. Not much, just a flicker. But it was enough. I ran to the kitchen. Opened the drawer. The phone was on, the camera app open. The screen showed the bedroom. Not the kitchen. The bedroom. The angle was from above the bed, looking down. I wasn't in the frame. But the shape was. Clearer now. Tall, thin, its edges sharp. It was standing over the bed, looking at the empty mattress. I screamed. Dropped the phone. It hit the floor, the screen still glowing. The shape moved. It turned, like it knew I was watching. Its face was wrong, blank, but not empty. Like a hole where a face should be. I backed away, the knife slipping from my hand. The phone kept recording. I could see it on the screen, the shape stepping closer, out of the frame. I ran to the door. Fumbled with the lock. My hands wouldn't work. The chain was stuck. I heard it behind me, a step heavy now. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The door opened. I stumbled into the hall, slamming it shut. The building was quiet, the lights too bright. I ran down the stairs, out into the street. The cold air hit me, sharp and real. I didn't go back. Not that night. Not ever. I stayed at a motel, paid in cash. I didn't sleep. I kept seeing it, the shape, the blank face, the phone. I called Ethan again. Still no answer. Days later, I heard he moved. Left town without a word. I don't blame him. The phone is still in that apartment. I don't know if it's still recording. I don't want to know. But sometimes at night I feel it. Like eyes on the back of my neck. Like something's watching, waiting for me to come back. I never will. But I know it's there. In the frame. Always watching. The hollow whisper. The house creaked at night. Old wood settling, my husband Tom said, waving it off as he flipped through his newspaper. I wasn't so sure. Our son, Ethan, 6 years old and all knees and elbows, had taken to whispering in his room after bedtime. I'd stand outside his door, ear pressed to the wood, catching fragments of his voice. "You're back," he'd say, soft and eager. "Tell me more." At first I thought it was just a game. Kids invent friends, don't they? Invisible ones who keep them company when the world feels too big. But Ethan's friend wasn't like that. He called it the man with no face. I caught him drawing one afternoon, crayons scattered across the kitchen table. His picture was a mess of black scribbles, a vague human shape with a blank oval where a face should be. "That's him," Ethan said, pointing proudly. I smiled, uneasy, and asked who he was. "The man who visits me," he said, like it was the most normal thing. I ruffled his hair, told him it was a great drawing, and tucked it away in a drawer. Kids have wild imaginations. That's what I told myself. That night I heard him again. His voice carried through the thin walls of our old farmhouse, low and steady, like he was having a real conversation. I crept down the hall barefoot, the floorboards cold under my toes. The door was ajar. Ethan sat cross-legged on his bed, staring at the corner of the room. The shadows there seemed thicker, heavier, like they were pooling into something solid. "What do you mean?" he whispered. "What's a promise?" I pushed the door open. The shadows snapped back to normal, just a corner with a toy chest and a stuffed bear. Ethan blinked up at me, surprised. "Mommy, you scared him away." His voice was small, almost accusing. I laughed it off, tucked him in, and told him to sleep. But as I closed the door, I felt it, a prickling on my neck, like someone was watching me from that same corner. The next morning, I asked Ethan about his friend. He was eating cereal, milk dribbling down his chin. "He's nice," he said. "He tells me stories about the woods." Our house sat on the edge of a forest, pines stretching out like a dark sea. I didn't like him talking about it. The woods felt wrong sometimes, too quiet, too still. "What kind of stories?" I asked, keeping my tone light. Ethan shrugged. "Old ones. About people who got lost." I didn't push. Kids make things up. But I started noticing things. Little things. A shadow in the hallway that moved too slowly. A faint hum, like a voice just out of reach, when I was alone in the kitchen. I told myself it was the house. Old places have quirks. Tom didn't notice anything, of course. He was always at the garage, fixing cars, coming home smelling of oil and metal. "You're jumping at shadows, Liz," he said when I mentioned it. He wasn't wrong. I'd always been the worrier. But Ethan wasn't worried. He was thrilled. He'd run to his room after dinner, eager to talk to his friend. I started checking on him more, peeking through the crack in the door. Sometimes I'd catch him nodding, like he was listening to someone. Once he giggled and said, "You're funny." My stomach twisted. There was nothing in that room but him. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I waited until Tom was asleep, his snores rattling the bedroom. I slipped down the hall, my heart thudding. Ethan's door was open, and he was whispering again. "You're sure?" he said, his voice so serious it didn't sound like him. I stepped inside, ready to scoop him up and tell him it was bedtime. But then I saw it. In the corner, where the shadows always seemed too dark, something moved. Not a person, not exactly. It was tall, too tall, its edges blurred like smudged charcoal. Where its face should have been, there was nothing, just a smooth, empty space that seemed to pull at the light. My breath caught. Ethan turned, his eyes wide. "Mommy, you see him?" he said, excited. I grabbed his hand, yanked him out of the room, and shut the door. My hands shook as I tucked him into our bed, telling him it was just a bad dream. But I didn't sleep. I kept seeing that blank face, that hollow where eyes should be. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't imagination. Something was in our house. And it was talking to my son. Morning came, gray and heavy. I didn't tell Tom what I saw. He'd laugh, call it stress, maybe suggest I see someone. I couldn't blame him. I barely believed it myself. But Ethan's chatter about the man with no face wasn't a game anymore. I watched him at breakfast, his small hands clutching a spoon, his eyes darting to the corners of the room. He wasn't scared. That scared me more. I kept him close all day. No running off to his room, no whispering to shadows. We baked cookies, watched cartoons, played board games. He laughed, but his gaze kept slipping to the windows, to the woods beyond. "Can I go play outside?" he asked after lunch. I shook my head too quickly. "Not today," I said. "It's too cold." It wasn't. The air was crisp, the kind of autumn day that begged for a walk. But the woods felt wrong, like they were waiting. That afternoon, I called my sister Jane. She's practical, the kind of person who'd roll her eyes at ghost stories. I didn't tell her everything, just enough. "Kids make stuff up," she said, her voice crackling through the phone. "But if you're worried, check his room. Maybe he's seeing something real, like a reflection." A reflection. I clung to that, something normal to explain the impossible. After Ethan went to bed, I searched his room. I moved the toy chest, checked the closet, even tapped the walls for hollow spots. Nothing. Just the kid's room, cluttered with stuffed animals and crayon drawings. I found a picture of the man with no face again, tucked under a pile of books. The blank oval stared up at me, and for a moment, I swore it shimmered, like heat rising off pavement. I shoved it back, my hands unsteady. That night, the whispers started again. I was in the kitchen, washing dishes, when I heard Ethan's voice from upstairs. Soft, deliberate, like he was answering someone. I dropped the sponge and ran, taking the stairs two at a time. His door was closed. I pushed it open, my heart pounding. Ethan sat on the floor, a flashlight casting a weak glow. "He says you're scared," Ethan whispered, not looking at me. "He says you shouldn't be." "Who says?" I asked, my voice sharp. Ethan pointed to the corner. Nothing was there, just shadows. But they felt wrong, too heavy, like they were holding their breath. I scooped him up, carried him to the living room, and turned on every light. "You're sleeping with us tonight," I said. He didn't argue, but he kept glancing back at his room, like he'd left something important behind. The next day, I went to the library in town. It was a small place, musty, with shelves crammed full of books no one read anymore. I asked the librarian, Mrs. Hargrove, about the woods. She was old, her hands spotted with age, but her eyes were sharp. "Folks used to say those woods were strange," she said, leaning across the counter. "Old stories. People going missing, mostly hunters. They'd find their gear, but never the bodies." I swallowed, my throat dry. "Anything else?" I asked. She hesitated, then pulled out a thin book, more a pamphlet, titled Legends of Pine Hollow. "Read this," she said. "But don't take it too seriously. It's just stories." I took it home, read it cover to cover. It mentioned a figure, a guardian of the woods, faceless and silent, who made deals with those desperate enough to listen. The deals always ended badly. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Ethan, about how he wasn't scared, how he listened so intently. The house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. Around midnight I heard it, a low hum, not quite a voice, coming from the walls. I checked on Ethan, asleep in our bed, his chest rising and falling. But the hum didn't stop. It followed me downstairs, growing louder near the back door, the one facing the woods. I opened the door, just a crack. The air was cold, the woods a wall of black beyond the porch light. Something moved out there, A flicker in the trees, too tall to be human. I slammed the door, locked it, and pressed my back against it. My hand shook so hard I dropped the key. Ethan's voice came from the stairs. "He says you shouldn't go out there," he said, sleepy but certain. "He says the woods remember." I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. I stopped letting Ethan out of my sight. No more playing alone, no more late-night whispers. I told Tom we needed to move. He looked at me like I'd lost it. "Liz, it's a phase," he said, wiping grease off his hands. "He'll grow out of it." I wanted to scream, to tell him about the thing in the corner, the hum in the walls, the flicker in the woods. But I didn't. He'd think I was crazy. Maybe I was. Ethan didn't make it easy. He'd sneak off to his room when I wasn't looking, talking to the air. "He's still here," he'd say when I caught him, his eyes bright with something I didn't understand. I started locking his door at night, keeping the key in my pocket. It felt wrong, like I was caging him, but what else could I do? The house didn't feel like ours anymore. The hum was constant now. Not loud, just there, like a heartbeat in the walls. I'd hear it when I was alone, doing laundry or chopping vegetables. It wasn't words, not exactly, but it felt like it was trying to be. Sometimes I'd catch a rhythm, a pattern, like it was mimicking speech. I'd turn on the radio, blast music, anything to drown it out. It didn't work. The hum slipped through, patient, waiting. I went back to the library. Mrs. Hargrove was there, her glasses perched on her nose. I asked about the faceless figure, the guardian from the book. She frowned, like she regretted giving it to me. "It's folklore," she said. "People made up stories to explain things. Missing hunters, bad harvests." But her voice wavered, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. I pressed her, asked if anyone else had seen it. She hesitated, then mentioned a name, Old Man Carter, who lived out by the creek. "He's half mad," she warned. "But he knows the woods." I found Carter's place that afternoon, a shack barely holding together. He was old, his face like cracked leather, his eyes sharp and suspicious. I told him about Ethan, about the man with no face. He didn't laugh. "You seen it too, haven't you?" he said, his voice low. I nodded, my stomach twisting. He leaned forward, his breath sour. "It's old. Older than the woods. It don't got a face 'cause it don't need one. It takes what it wants." "What does it want?" I asked. He shrugged, his eyes distant. "Promises. Always promises." He wouldn't say more, just told me to keep Ethan away from the woods. I drove home, my hands tight on the wheel, Carter's words looping in my head. Promises. Ethan had mentioned that word, hadn't he? That night I woke to silence. No hum, no creaks, just a stillness that pressed against my ears. I checked on Ethan. He wasn't in bed. Panic clawed at me. I ran to his room, the door unlocked, the key still in my pocket. He was there, sitting on the floor, staring at the corner. "He's sad," Ethan whispered. "He says you don't trust him." I grabbed him, held him too tight. "Who's sad?" I asked, my voice shaking. Ethan's eyes were glassy, like he was half asleep. "The man. He says he can help us. He says he knows you're scared." I carried him back to our room, locked the door, and sat up all night, watching him sleep. The hum started again, faint, like a whisper from the woods. The next day, I boarded up Ethan's window. Tom thought I was overreacting, but he helped, hammering nails with a frown. "This is crazy, Liz," he said. I didn't care. I wasn't letting those woods look in. That night, Ethan cried, said he missed his friend. I held him, told him it was okay, that we'd find new friends. But his sobs felt wrong, too deep for a 6-year-old, like they weren't entirely his. The hum grew louder after that. It wasn't just in the walls anymore. It was in the air, in my head, a low, steady drone that made my teeth ache. I started seeing things, flickers in the corners, shadows that didn't match the light. Once, in the bathroom mirror, I saw it behind me, that blank, faceless shape, gone when I turned. I didn't tell Tom. I didn't tell anyone. Ethan stopped talking about the man with no face. I thought it was over. I thought we'd won. But then I found a new drawing under his pillow, a crude sketch of our family. Tom, me, Ethan, and a tall, faceless figure holding Ethan's hand. I burned the drawing. The flames curled the paper, that faceless figure turning to ash in the backyard fire pit. Ethan didn't know. I couldn't let him keep it, couldn't let that thing stay in our house, even on paper. But the hum didn't stop. It was louder now, a constant drone that followed me everywhere, through the grocery store, in the car, even in my dreams. I'd wake up gasping, the sound still ringing in my ears. Tom noticed I wasn't sleeping. "You're falling apart, Liz," he said one morning, his voice gentle but firm. He wanted me to see a doctor, get pills, something to calm me down. I didn't argue. I was tired, so tired my bones ached. But I knew pills wouldn't fix this. The man with no face wasn't in my head. He was real. I'd seen him. Ethan was different now. He didn't talk about his friend anymore, but he wasn't himself. He'd stare out the window, his small face blank, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. I kept him inside, away from the woods, but it didn't feel like enough. The forest seemed closer every day, the trees leaning in, their shadows stretching across our lawn. I started closing the curtains, locking every door. One afternoon, I found Ethan in the backyard, standing at the edge of the grass, staring into the woods. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. He didn't turn. "He's waiting," he said, so quiet I barely heard him. I grabbed his arm, pulled him inside, and locked the door. My hands shook as I checked the windows, the bolts, anything that could let something in. That night I heard footsteps. Not Ethan's small, quick ones, but heavy, deliberate, like someone pacing the house. I checked every room, flashlight in hand, but found nothing. The hum was louder, almost a voice now, though I couldn't make out words. I sat on the couch, clutching a kitchen knife, telling myself it was just the house settling. But I didn't believe it. The next day, I went back to Carter. His shack smelled of damp wood and tobacco. I told him everything, Ethan's drawings, the hum, the figure in the corner. He listened, his eyes narrowing. "It's taken a liking to your boy," he said. "It wants something." "Always does." I asked what. He shook his head. "Depends. Could be small. Could be everything." He told me to burn sage, to mark the doors with salt, old tricks to keep things out. I bought sage at the store, sprinkled salt on every threshold, feeling foolish but desperate. It didn't work. The hum grew stronger, and Ethan started sleepwalking. I'd find him at the back door, his hand on the knob, staring into the dark. "He's calling," he'd mumble, his voice not quite his own. I'd carry him back to bed, my heart racing, and lock the door again. Tom saw it once, his face pale as he helped me. He didn't say anything, but I knew he was starting to believe. One night I couldn't sleep. The hum was too loud, vibrating in my chest. I checked on Ethan, found him sitting up in bed, eyes open but unfocused. "He says it's time," he whispered. I froze. "Time for what?" I asked. He didn't answer, just lay back down and closed his eyes. I stayed there, watching him, the knife in my hand until dawn. The next morning, I called a priest. Father Daniels was young, skeptical, but he came. He blessed the house, sprinkled holy water, said prayers in a calm, steady voice. It felt like a performance, but I clung to it. Ethan watched, silent, his eyes on the corner of the room. When the priest left, he tugged my sleeve. "He didn't like that," he said. I didn't ask who. That night, the hum stopped. The silence was worse. It was thick, heavy, like the air before a storm. I checked the locks, the salt lines, everything. Then I saw it, Ethan, standing at the edge of the woods, barefoot in his pajamas. I ran outside, screaming his name, but he didn't move. The trees loomed over him, their branches like fingers. I grabbed him, pulled him back, and he blinked up at me, confused. "He said you'd come," he whispered. I looked into the woods. Something was there, tall and faceless, its edges blurring into the dark. It didn't move, but I felt it watching, waiting. I carried Ethan inside, my heart pounding, and locked the door. We couldn't stay. I told Tom we were leaving, no arguments. He looked at me, his eyes tired, and nodded. He'd seen enough. Ethan at the edge of the woods, the salt lines disturbed, the way the house felt wrong. We packed that morning, throwing clothes and toys into bags, not caring what we left behind. Ethan was quiet, clutching his stuffed bear, his eyes darting to the windows. The car was loaded by noon. I buckled Ethan into the back seat, my hands shaking. The woods watched us, silent and still, the trees too tall, too close. I got in, slammed the door, and Tom started the engine. We didn't talk. The hum was gone, but the silence was heavier, like it was waiting for us to make a mistake. We drove for hours, heading to Jane's place in the city. Ethan fell asleep, his bear slipping to the floor. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that faceless thing in the road behind us. Nothing was there, just empty highway and fading light. I let myself breathe, just a little. Maybe we'd escaped. Maybe it was over. Jane's apartment was small, cluttered with books and plants. She hugged us, asked questions, but I didn't have answers. I just wanted Ethan safe. That night he slept on her couch, his small body curled under a blanket. I sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall. The city hummed outside, cars, voices, life. It was different from the hum in the house, warmer, real. I told myself we were okay. But Ethan wasn't okay. He stopped talking, stopped smiling. He'd sit by the window, staring at nothing, his hands twisting the hem of his shirt. I asked him what was wrong. "He's still here," he whispered, his voice so small it broke me. I held him, told him it was just a bad dream, but I didn't believe it. The man with no face wasn't bound to the house or the woods. It had followed us. One night, I woke to a sound, not a hum, but a whisper, low and steady, like wind through dead leaves. It came from the living room. I crept out, my heart in my throat. Ethan was there, standing by the window, the city lights casting shadows across his face. "He says we made a promise," he said, not turning. "He says we can't run." I grabbed him, pulled him away from the window, and closed the blinds. My hands shook as I checked the locks, the doors, anything that could let something in. Jane found us, her face pale. "What's going on?" she asked. I couldn't explain. I just held Ethan, his body stiff, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. The next day, I took him to a therapist. She was kind, her office full of toys and bright colors. Ethan didn't talk much, just drew pictures, more blank faces, more dark shapes. The therapist said it was trauma, that he'd grow out of it with time. I nodded, thanked her, but I knew better. This wasn't trauma. It was something older, something that didn't let go. That night I saw it again. I was tucking Ethan in, singing softly to keep the fear at bay. The room was dark, just a sliver of light from the hall. In the corner, where the shadows pooled, it stood, tall, faceless, its edges soft, like it was part of the dark. I froze, my voice catching. Ethan sat up, his eyes wide. "He's here," he said, almost happy. I screamed for Jane. She ran in, flipped on the light. The figure was gone, but the air felt wrong, heavy, like it was pressing down on us. Jane didn't see it, but she believed me. We packed again, left her apartment, drove to a motel. I didn't know where we were going anymore, just that we had to keep moving. Ethan's drawings got worse. He'd sketched that faceless thing holding his hand, standing in the woods, standing in our house, standing in Jane's apartment. "He's my friend," he'd say, and I'd want to cry. He wasn't scared. He was never scared. Last night, I woke to silence. Ethan was gone. The motel door was open, the night air cold. I ran outside, screaming his name. He was there, at the edge of the parking lot, staring into the dark. "He says it's time," he whispered as I pulled him back. I looked where he was looking. It was there, faceless and still, waiting. It didn't move, didn't speak. But I knew. The promise wasn't mine. It was Ethan's. And he was ready to keep it.